Our streaming works. We are streaming live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. Holy cow, we're all over the place. First, I want to say hello to Mona. I see you back here. Welcome. If you're with us today and you're not hopped in the back so you can talk to us with question and answers, please do jump on back. And as soon as we get done with a little bit of teaching, we're going to be answering questions. And so I'd love to see you back here. The Zoom link is in the post that you're looking at right now. So come on over. If you're in my group, you got an email also. It has the link. So come on down. We'd love to see you in the back and chat. If you're here today, you are a person that is a community leader, an advocate that wants change and wants to make things healthier at home and in the workplace and in your community. You just really want to be healthier. And we're grateful that you're here. I want to make a special shout out to Tanya and to Lisa, who always catch the replays. I know they can't always be here live, but I appreciate them checking in. So if you're here and you're catching the replay, type hashtag replay. We'd love to see that you're here. And the best thing you can do is if you're getting quality out of these videos that we're doing each week, please invite your friends, tell them all about our group, have them come over because we're going to be having a party in our group in April and we don't want your friends to miss out. So make sure you invite them and bring them in. We'd love for them to join us. And again, if you are on Facebook and you want to jump over to the Zoom, you should see the link there in our post. Come on over and we'll do question and answers here at the end. Today, we're going to be talking about thinking, like what's in our heads, right? Facts and fictions of our thoughts. Because sometimes we think that just because we think it is true. And I'm here to tell you that's not always the case. So we're going to dive into that and break it down for you in just a second. But I'm Renee Schulte, and I am a clinician by trade, and I am a former politician, a recovering workaholic. And now I work in the mental health space. I help people individually that want to create better policies in their own personal lives, that want to do better at home. And then I help people that want to build policies that work in their workplace and in their community. So you're talking like policy procedure manuals, systems, all the things that need to change in order for us to live a healthier life with the goal of being a better work-life balance. And that's what my life is all about. And so I'm here to chat with you today about some of the mistakes that we make. And like I said, we're going to be doing a policy party in April. And this year we're going to have 2 tracks. We've done 1 track before on just public policy, but this time we're going to do a personal track as well. And so right now we're talking about the 4 mistakes that we make on the personal side. Sometimes it gets us all ginned up. And so we're going to be talking about those mistakes. So in case you forget what those mistakes are, I'm going to make sure we let Peggy here in the back. Peggy's joining us live. So welcome, Peggy. Welcome, Mona. And so the 4 biggest mistakes that we see policy people make is that first of all, we want to change everything all at once, right? We talked about this last week. You remember those people that are, setting up in January, they're ready for the first of the new year and have all of their ideas on what they want to change for their, personal changes for the year, making those New Year's resolutions, right? And they set about 12 and they forget by the end of the first week what they were. And then by February 3rd, they quit all of them. That's pretty typical. So the first mistake, we try to change everything all at once. The second thing is about what we're thinking, what we think we know, the language. And if it's on the public policy track, we think that we know the language about a topic and we think we understand it. But when you start to talk to other people, they may have very different words. Same is true in your own head. And today, this is what we're going to focus on is not believing everything we think. We're going to talk about how you figure out if it's fact or fiction. The third thing that we mess up on both sides is we don't ask for help. On the policy side, we try to go it alone to be that lone ranger. And on the personal side, we just try to tough it up and think that we're going to be able to fix it all ourselves. And sometimes what goes on in our head is kind of scary. And sometimes you need to let somebody else in to help straighten all that out. And so we're going to talk about that next week, about asking for help. Like, who in the world could that be? And I bet you there's a lot more options out there than what you're thinking of. So if you have an affinity to avoid certain types of clinicians or certain types of professionals, fine. Pick a different one. We're going to talk about 3 groups of people next week that you can reach out to for support and for help if you want to reach out. And everybody needs help. So let's talk about that next week. And then 4th, we're going to talk about the story we tell ourselves. And Peggy's here with me in the back, and she's all about Mind Your Mindset book from Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller. It's an awesome book. And we're going to walk through how to change that story that you're telling about yourself. So there's something that you want to change. There's a story you're telling yourself about that. And the story is sometimes helpful for you to make the change, and sometimes not very helpful to help you make the change. And that's going to be in 2 weeks. So if that's interesting to you, come back. So last week we talked about the first mistake, wanting to change everything all at once and having absolutely nothing to show for it. And this really does go back to people that either want to do goals or they want to do New Year's resolutions. And, you wake up thinking, oh, it's a fresh new day. It's a new start. And we have all these ideas of things we can change, right? That's not how it works. Our bodies are accustomed to the status quo, changing as little as possible. That's how we're made. That's how we're built. And so we talked about that last week about if you want to make changes, you got to make them small and you got to make them make sense. We talked about habit stacking. We talked about the book Atomic Habit by James Clear. And so if that's something you're interested in, check out last week's training. And that's exactly what we talked about. But this week, we're going to think about what we think about in our heads. The things we think about in our head, first of all, are they things you'd say to anybody else in public? The names you call yourself, the thoughts that you have, the things that you say to yourself, are they better or worse than you say to other people? Oftentimes it's worse, right? Oftentimes we say worse things to people than we would ever say to ourselves. And we don't even think about that. We just say it in our heads like as if it's true and as if it doesn't stop. And in both cases, that's not true. You can stop them and you can change them. So it's something, though, you have to think about. You have to think about thinking. You can't just let thinking go on autopilot and expect it to change because it's pretty habitual, too. It has a routine. It has habits. But we're going to talk today about that. And there's a book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan called The Gap and the Gain. And it's one of my favorite books. And the reason it's one of my favorite books is they really look into memories that we have and the fact that you can actually change them. What your memories are to you is what you're rehearsing in your head over and over, what you're telling yourself over and over. And you can actually change those. You can go backwards and look for the gain in every situation. And yes, there's going to be things. We all have trials. We all have struggles. We all have bad things. But what do you focus on coming out of the other side? Do you focus on how horrible and awful and terrible it was and how big of a victim you are? Or do you focus on the life lessons and the gains and the things you learned about yourself and about others through it, right? Humongous difference. And if you were to think about that, the book, The Gap and the Gain, all the way at the end, talks about how you can reframe trauma to find things that are positive in your life. You can actually reframe some of the worst things in life and change how you view trauma. And if that is true, which I believe it's true, the doctors are doing research to prove it's true, that will make all the difference in the world with changing people's relation to trauma. And right now, many people are in therapy and all kinds of things because they're stuck victims of trauma. You don't have to be a victim. You can reframe it, figure out the gain in it, and move forward. Figure out what you got out of it and let it go. The only person that remembers all of that is you. So that's what's going on in our brain. So let's think about a time you went on vacation. You and your friends might have gone. What are the odds that the three of you remember the same things, that things that happened the same way every day? I've got two girlfriends. We went on vacation pre-COVID. We'd go pretty regularly. We're out of our rhythm now, and I hate it because we used to go all the time. But I can tell you, we can tell you stories, and then we all have a different perspective of that story. Now, that some of those are stories that they're not terrible stories, but they're funny, but we remember different parts. Well, why is that? When three people are in the same place, the stories don't match. Well, there's reasons. Research shows that there are multiple factors that impact your memory, including the degree of attention and the degree that you were awake or paying attention or concentrating. So how awake you are in a situation matters greatly to whether or not you remember it or not. Think about driving on autopilot. You go from point A to point B, you might not remember how you got from here to there. Most of the time, we're not really highly awakened in that situation. But the day that somebody almost cuts you off or almost hits you, all of a sudden now you're awake. And I bet you remember that drive to the office a whole lot more than the days when nothing happens, right? So it talks about how depending upon how alert you are, how awake you are, it changes what you remember. The second thing that's important is what interests you or motivates you, whether it's a need or a necessity. Things that motivate you, you're more interested in remembering. So if you're going on vacation and you want to remember the beauty of the vacation, you've probably slowed down to take that mental picture and make sure that you remember it because it's important to you. You want to have that memory, or you're with your grandkids or you're with your family. You want to have a memory that you can recall. So to do that, you have to think about it. And if it's of interest to you, you're likely to remember it. Third, the emotional state that you're in. It gives valuable information as to whether or not it's going to be remembered or not. So if you're highly emotional and all you have are the feelings, you may not remember the details of a situation. This happens all the time in accidents, happens all the time in crime. The person that's highly agitated, that's highly emotional, that they got harmed or had to witness that, oftentimes doesn't remember the details of the incident because the emotional part of their brain took over. And the part of your brain, the outside part, is the part that makes memories. The inside part, where all of the emotions are, when that takes over, the outside part of the brain doesn't really get blood to it to make memories. So if you're highly emotional in a situation, you're probably not going to remember a whole lot of things. And so two people could be in the same situation, one highly emotional, one not remember the same. And then finally, the environment, how light something was or how noisy it was or where it was. Sometimes you can even think of a smell and it puts you right back to a place. I don't know about you, but I know that there are smells that put me right back into my grandmother's house or my aunt's house. I can smell it and go, oh my gosh, that smells like so-and-so. And I haven't been around them for years, but my smell will take me directly back to a space and a memory and time, right? So that's when you think about memory. When you're thinking about what you're thinking about, what you've remembered, what you're rehearsing, all of that has played into it. So we remember things based on all of these factors. Highly emotional memories sometimes stick out better, but they can also likely be wrong because the details get all fuzzy. We get all worked up in the emotion and forget the details. So back to our example of witnesses. So think about a witness again in a crime or an accident. It depends on each person's role or perspective as to what they're going to remember. So if the two cars that hit in that intersection, the two drivers are going to have very different perspectives sometimes than the people standing around that weren't in the accident itself. Or say if a pedestrian almost got hit before the two people crashed, the pedestrian almost getting hit, the two people that crashed, again, all those are different types of memories. So when you think about how you remember things and what goes on in your head, there's reasons why it is the way it is. But that also means we can change it. So does it mean we have to think everything that we believe? Absolutely not. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is how do you know if something in your head is a fact or if it's a fiction or opinion? It could be opinion or fiction, however you want to think about it. So how do you know that the thing in your head or the thing that you say to yourself, if it's real or not real? There's going to be a 4-step process. We're going to talk about 4 steps to figure out if something is real or not real, fact or fiction in our head. So first thing, this thing you say to yourself, write it down. Sometimes step 1 all by itself, writing it down, you're like, oh my gosh, that's not true. And you can see it in writing and you're done. You're like, no, that's not true. Sometimes they'll just writing it out. You're like, holy crap, why did I just say that to myself? That's not true. And so just by writing it down, you can, the thing you say to yourself, the thing that you think, write it down. That is step 1. Step 2, we have to evaluate it. Sometimes just looking at it on paper, like I said, helps. And sometimes you have to think about it. Is that really real? We're going to give you an example in just a minute. And number 3, what if it's not true? So you need to restate it in a more factual way. You need to catch yourself, say it, and restate it. And every time that you say it, replace it with truth. Because saying a lie to yourself over and over and over about something isn't really helpful. And then 4, if it's partially true, you need to reframe it. So let's walk through an example. So I have a family member in this space that says, I'm old, I'm never going to be in good shape again. That's the statement they're telling themselves in their head. So they wrote it down. I'm old, I will never be in good shape again. Well, let's look at that. Let's evaluate it. So are you older than you were yesterday? Yep. Are you the oldest that you're ever going to be? Nope. So what exactly equals old? Is it a fact? Is it a spot on the dotted line? Can you say that's old? Probably not. So there's probably not exactly a lot of truth in that statement that you're old. Now, you may feel older than you used to be, and some of those qualifying statements may be true, but the fact old, not old is not really a number. So you can't really put a label on that. You see what I'm saying? So the next part about never, I will never be in good shape again. Almost every single time we use never, always type words, we are exaggerating, because almost never is somebody never this or that, or always this or that, right? You can almost all the time think of an exception. So if you're like, I'm always feeling terrible. Well, if you think really hard, maybe not even really hard, you can think about the day before yesterday when you felt pretty good. So you're always feeling bad isn't true. So those words, every time you catch yourself using those, it's an exaggeration, and you need to dig down deeper to see what else could we do instead. So if you use always or never, that's a pretty good sign that it is not the truth. It is an opinion. So then what about the statement, I'm old and I will never be in good shape again? What might need to be deleted or reframed, right? I personally wouldn't use the word old because it is totally an opinion in your own mind. When a person feels old, is really relative, up to them. It's not a number on a calendar, right? We know people, we've seen people. Sister Jean in Loyola, she's 102 now. Do you know that woman, she was my advisor when I was in college in Mundelein, Loyola, a billion years ago now. She was my singing nun advisor. I kid you not. And now she's 102. Love that lady. But you think that she feels old? Probably. She's 102. But for me, that's a long way from here. So what is old, right? So I would not use that word. But then I'd reframe the statement about how I feel about it, like something more truthful. As I get older, maybe say something helpful. Like, as I get older, I'm focused on being fit and as healthy as I can be. Something like that. So that when you catch yourself saying, I'm old, I'm completely out of shape, rephrase it to, rephrase it. Just say, I am older than I used to be, and I can get stronger. I know I can. I can get better. I can improve. I can get strong. I can be strong. I am strong. However you want to do it, whether you want to put the positive in your place, some people preach to that, whether you want to put it as a challenge to yourself, however you want to do. But you've got to think about it and dive in. So this is where those thoughts or statements live, right? You have to think about diving in to what you're thinking and making sure if it's fact or fiction. And if it's fiction, you got to change it. You got to stop yourself when you do it. Now, I know this isn't always easy, and you might need some help. So if you need some help, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. Next week, we talk about how do we get help and who do we ask. And so come back next week. We'll talk about the 3 different groups we can talk to and 3 different levels of support and help. We can talk about all of that next week. But if it works, your brain will naturally tell you things that you've heard from your parents, from television, from other media, from friends, and you don't even question it most of the time. We just repeat it to ourselves. But I'm telling you, today, if you're listening, write thinking in the chat, thinking. And if you have a statement that you tell yourself that you want to talk about, put it in the chat. We'll reach out and we'll talk about, okay, how can we reframe that to something more positive? Because if we don't, we continue to be more rude to ourselves than we'd ever be to our friends or to anybody else in public. And who needs that? Because the person that lives with you every day is you. So you've got to be kind to you. So next week, we're going to talk about how to get help. So if you're somebody that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking like this, I need help. Great. Come back next week. We're going to get you the right people. There's more people in your life than you probably even imagined that can help. And for those who might need to struggle with their mindset and need some help, invite them to our policy party that's going to start on April the 10th, because we're going to talk about not only our personal policies, but our public policies and how to move both of those forward so that we can be healthier and happier. Great to see you all. We'll see you next week, and we will see you at the party. Hi, ladies in the back. Are you here?
Yes. Awesome. Great job, Renee.
Thanks for stopping in. I saw you said you were coming by. I was like, woohoo, Maggie's coming.
Yay. Yay. No, I mean, that's like my favorite topic this last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, you're in the Mind Your Mindset book. So
Yep.
I know there's a whole lot of that. That's actually 2 weeks from now. I'm doing like a shorter version of their book. But
oh, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, because it's a really big deal. We tell ourselves things that we just assume is true. And
yeah,
when you dive in, you figure out maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And I start reading the book and I'm, it's like, holy crap. Yes. How many thoughts do we have?
Right. So what the way I'm going to work it together is like, so say somebody wants to change something in their personal life or in the public eye or whatever, there's a story they're telling themselves about it, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes that story isn't helpful toward helping them change it.
Right.
Oftentimes the story is it's too hard, it's impossible, I'll never be able to do it, I'm too old, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so that's where the story part comes in is if you really want this, whatever this is, this goal, this thing to change, you've got to start telling yourself things that are more helpful in that process. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you sabotage yourself. And so trying to help people see the thoughts are one thing, but then it's the story as to why you keep saying that to yourself that is so important. And that's what's so cool about Mind Your Mindset. They dive into that story. And so you can pick one thought and then because there's a whole story behind why you say that to you. Always.
Yeah.
And so, or what you believe about yourself or whatever, right? My sister hit 50 and she's decided she's old. And
I'm going to turn 50 and I'm not old.
I'm 50 and I'm not old, but she's got a different way of looking at it. And so it's a massive difference. It's so interesting to see how I have dealt with it versus how she feels about it. And so it's all mindset, right? And so you've got to help people see that you don't have to live there.
Right, right. Definitely. No, that's, I mean, just awesome. I think a lot of people need that, and I hope more people show up to you and see and review your.
Maybe. I just put in the create group, I created a quiz to try to help people figure out if they need to work on themselves or on public policy first.
Oh, okay.
If I'd love for you to look at it and see if you think it's terrible, if it needs fixed. It's
Well, I'll tell you
draft,
right now that
like,
it's going to be all personal for me. So like,
I drafted it and went, well, let's see. I don't know. But I
okay.
need to come up with something like, I'm trying to come up with a fork in the road because the pillars are similar in both ways.
Mhm.
Everything I teach is similar, but
Right.
some people have struggles trying to see it on the personal side, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
some people need to deal with their personal stuff before they go deal with public stuff.
Yeah.
And so there should be some steps on that, because people get out in front of themselves and they're a hot mess trying to pass stuff. That's worse. And so
Right.
I'm trying to help
Right.
people, like, let's fix this and then go fix this, instead of put all my personal business all over everything.
Right.
Mona, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How are
Hmm.
you?
Good. So, you have a bill up right now that's causing much consternation. What are you saying to yourself on that bill?
What bill is that?
The one that your team is working on here.
I don't have a bill. What bill do I
Yeah.
have?
The one that the NAMI is working on.
We don't have a bill that we're passing. I'm killing other people's, if that's what you mean.
Okay, well, maybe that's what I mean.
I'm killing other
can
stuff
see I
that's
don't-
bad. You betcha.
I don't follow that issue as well as I should.
Yeah, I am causing some.
What do you tell
I am
yourself when
causing
you're
some trouble.
looking at that? What do you tell yourself when you're looking at that?
Oh
bill and
man,
you
that's
see
a party.
those
I'm
things?
celebrating because I got rid of some bad stuff. That's a good thing. It's a whole different ball of wax when you get rid of bad stuff.
Mhm.
It's like,
I know.
woohoo, let's kill it. Because I get really worked up if it's going to be bad stuff that moves, right? So it's nice to be able to kill it when it's bad.
Well,
So
one of our mutual friends said, the two of you make me crazy sometimes. And I said, well, this is a bad bill. It's a really bad bill.
see, that's all you can say. I can't help you when you pick bad things. I have to kill it.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
thank you both for stopping by. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it
thank
is.
you. I
Have a
don't know
great
if you
day.
could, I don't know if you can see us because
I can't see your face, Mona, but I can hear you.
Well, I don't know why you can't see my face. I don't know how
Well,
to get my face
You
on.
know, technology.
Yeah, you know how technical I am. I keep hitting on this little button that says pin or, and it comes up pin or rename, but
There you go.
you can see
I
what
don't
you
know.
guys have little cameras on here, but I was writing notes, so I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you. I was
You were
writing
doing
notes
great.
as fast as you talk, and that's not easy.
Oh, so Peggy, I found out this. So I was on a call this morning with Michael Hyatt, and he talked about Leader Books, which was his book subscription club.
Okay.
And he talked about, he was given examples of how to decide. Today was 4 tactics to decide if you need to hire somebody else. And he has like a screening process of 4 things to go through, one of which is reducing lines of unprofitable business
Mhm.
before you go to hire more people. And he named Leader Books as one of the things that they got rid of because it was unprofitable. He said it was expensive, it was hard to maintain, because he was doing all the physical books and delivering the books
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
doing the book, sort of book clubbish thing. And they had like a group that did it. It was like a whole big thing. So once they figured out, he's had some very vocal people that were very upset when it went away. But he said there were very few of them, and it really wasn't profitable for all the amount of work and energy and effort and time
Right.
that he had done into it. And so he said that they avoided having to hire more. They just ended up cutting off a couple of things like that were less. And so I thought of that, and I was like, I assumed that's what it had been, because I knew they had been doing that kind of pruning. But
Yeah.
he was pretty point blank about it this morning. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll tell Peggy.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. I know. I don't know how like subscription boxes, like people that those book type of book clubs can like sustain, because I mean, the shipping and to get, things there on time, and, just the labor it takes to do that.
Right.
When
And
everybody,
I think they were
download
trying to
it.
bring in the books too. So they had them and then they were shipping. So then there was 2 levels of that, right? Trying to like
Right.
be the person that gave the box. So they had to like buy all of this stuff, assuming people would all order it, then you'd get backlogs of extra books you didn't need. And
Right.
then they'd have to ship it as the box to whoever. It just sounds like, wow, what a pain in the butt. So anyway, I'm intrigued by what you're doing, but I was like, well, there are some lessons I know for sure that I've watched because I was in his leader book club for a while. The other thing that was really challenging, he was trying to get books, like the audience was like too broad. And so sometimes the books didn't apply at all. It's like
Oh.
he would have businesses in mind that were way bigger than mine. And so some of the books I was like, it doesn't really even apply to anything I can do, but yet I was allowed in. And so I was like, always kind of trying to tell myself, okay, when my business gets bigger, this will apply. But,
Right.
it seemed like the audience, but I'm sure what he was trying to do was make it profitable. So they'd open the doors to more people.
Right.
But sometimes when you pick a pretty specific book, it only applies to certain people. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing I would learn because he was trying to do business and he was talking about multi-million-dollar businesses and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
No.
I know. I think
Me
I
and
want to
mine.
just keep it down to like what, like, general things like our thoughts in our head. We all have them. So like,
right. Then
I
could do
love
a
the
lot.
Gap in the Game book
That's my favorite.
and actually
Yeah.
I am in Ben Hardy's like exponential psychology course right now
Wow.
on his new book, 10x is easier than 2x. I just started that. I am
Wow.
blown away.
He is something special.
Yeah.
I was in a couple of things he did before. I haven't seen this one, but he did something before that was like a daily email thing for so many days. It was phenomenal. He is
Mhm.
so smart. But that Gap in the Game book, if you look at that last chapter, you can really rewrite trauma history. It
Mhm.
should change the world of therapy if people were smart enough to read what he wrote and they've got the data to prove it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just rehearsing in therapy
Oh yeah.
memories that
Yeah.
are only yours that you can change. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
It is.
I read that and I was like, holy crap, you could change the entire, which
Yeah.
needs to happen. It
Yeah.
absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was just
So
blown away
What
by
was
that
the
guy.
name? What was the name of
The Gap and the Gain.
The Gap
by
in the
Dr.
Game?
Benjamin
That's the one you
Hardy.
said earlier. Okay.
Yeah, it's an awesome book, The Gap
Yeah,
and the Gain. And it helps you think about like how far you've come because most people, especially achievers, we always want to see how far we have to go and we never measure up. And so you're always defeated. So instead of looking at that direction, you got to look backwards and go, well, look how far I've come from last year or last week or
Mhm.
last month and celebrate. And it's just a paradigm shift, but it's amazing the difference it makes in your life because a lot of us are trained to always have this ideal out in front and you just never get there and you feel all beat up about it. And anyway, it's cool
It's
stuff.
that horizon. It's the sunset on the horizon that you can never quite get to. You keep walking towards it and it goes away.
And it goes away. That's right.
Or-
It's really
or in honor
fascinating.
Of St. Patrick's Day, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. I
I've
did
chased those
have a
before.
rainbow like really close and we tried to chase it and it just
At the bottom, if you ever get to see the bottom, it is a gold light at the bottom of one, but it's not a pot of gold. I tried to. Well, thanks, ladies, for stopping by. I appreciate
Well,
your
thank you
feedback.
for doing
Thank you
this.
so much, Renee.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody.